Hi everyone, it's Ren here. Hope you're doing well, guys. It has certainly been a little while since we spent some time together on YouTube. I have been still in Ireland, taking a little bit of a break from making videos. Certainly not from life. In some senses, it's probably life itself that has caused this lesser availability to make videos, because I've been quite active in other respects. I really hope you've been doing well, and hopefully also this new video is going to foreshadow more regularity to come once again on my side. Probably not daily regularity, but something probably just a little bit more manageable. So I don't quite know yet. I don't want to start talking about the sort of regularity that I expect in terms of my output, because I just don't know. I just know that I have felt like making a video today, and that's already a good thing. So in this video I would like to tackle a few topics, but I suppose the main topic that I wanted to tackle is this question of antidepressants, and with a connection to MBTI and Enneagram, to sort of keep the topic connected to personality typing and all that. Because as it happens, I have actually been off antidepressants for about a week now, and it's really caused me to wonder about questions about the impact that antidepressants can have on a person's personality, and whether that suggests that it is actually possible for people to change personality in a much more radical fashion than we would typically believe that they do, simply based on my experience. Because I do feel, and you will hear a lot of people say that being on antidepressants can really impact not just your moods, but the very way in which you relate to mood. If I might employ a slightly philosophical perspective, I should add that in the future, it is possible that this channel will once again become more directed towards philosophy and philosophical topics, or at least a philosophical approach to perhaps everyday questions, perhaps sometimes not so everyday questions. But it just so happens that, I feel like I've come to the end of a cycle with the videos on personality, MBTI, and these things. I've already indicated, I've given glimpses of the approaching the end of a cycle, something that I've already talked about in previous videos, but this is really that's been confirmed in my mind. I do feel like, and you'll see that what I'm engaging in right now is an aside, but it will connect back to topics that I will approach in a little while, to do with Enneagram particularly. So what I mean to say is I sort of became a little bit less motivated about making videos on the topic of personality, MBTI. Even psychology is almost too broad a term for what I'd been talking about, and I'd very much enjoyed making those videos and having people react to them, and people have been very much continuing to react to them since then, since I kind of went on a bit of hiatus. I mean, it's only been like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, no more, so it's not really a hiatus, but you know what I mean, compared to the rhythm that had been my trademark until then. It's great to see that the channel really has enough content to almost be like an organism, to have a life in and of itself, and I continue to read things and to appreciate the comments that I get. Nevertheless, it doesn't change the fact, from my own perspective, I have felt like, and this was a decision that I was or a realization that I made while I was still on antidepressants. and it's connected to being on antidepressants, you will see that this topic, rather than being the topic of this video, is just it's like overarching. The whole conversation is going to be interwoven throughout. So one of the benefits of being on antidepressants that I can definitely recognize now is it's connected to a potential drawback, if you want to call it that, of being on antidepressants. It's two sides of the same coin, which is that you develop an ability to relate to your feelings in a more detached way. So in a sense, your feelings do lose in intensity, and by the same process, or in the process that's connected to it, you're more able to manage your feelings, not let them overwhelm you as much as they used to. So if the feeling of sadness was part of what you were feeling, it's good to be able to detach yourself from it a little bit. And I suppose that helps a lot of people, and helped me very much last year when I was not at my best. But it comes at a certain price, which is the blunting of the emotions, and I will come to that shortly. So while I was still on antidepressants, which is still very recent, I always had this increased emotional self-awareness, which paradoxically was connected to a blunting of the intensity with which I felt at least certain emotions. And one of them allowed me to come to this realization that I'd come to a stage of my video making where I was, my motivation had changed in nature. Whereas at the beginning, my motivation was, linked to a form of excitement at a new field of possibilities, of producing content, exchanging with people, etc. Progressively, my motivation changed in nature and texture towards something that I eventually had to reject. And that is connected to Enneagram, because I think that it is connected to the Enneagram 4 and the idea of authenticity. Simply that I come to look at this motivation in the face as something that was no longer this excitement at the exploration of a field of possibilities and exchanging with people. I mean, the exchanging with people remained there, but I always need to have that kind of intellectual stimulation which is related to exploration of a field of possibilities. And that had become a lot less present, probably because I was feeling like I produced a lot of content and I had explored a lot of what I wanted to explore, and I felt perhaps that trying to go into more depth about these topics, becoming more philosophical, becoming more technical, might have the consequence of alienating some people and taking away the other side, which was the sharing with other people. But as a replacement for this decrease in intellectual stimulation, my motivation had become sort of attached to and was latching onto an anticipated form of satisfaction at the idea of garnering views and of increasing my number of subscribers. And once I was able to, and probably the antidepressant helped give me that form of distance coming from the detachment, once I was able to identify this motivation, I think the Enneagram 4 in me, which is probably not my Enneagram anymore. I believe that I am a 5 with a 4 wing, and that I have identified that in a rather decisive manner at this point. But nevertheless, the 4 side being very strong in me and being partly the reason why I was deluded, so to speak, in the notion that I was a 4. Because the 4 is so strong in me, it's connected to this idea of being true to how you feel and true to your sense of authenticity and not wanting to do things because that is how people do things, being connected very much to how one's personality is demarcated from other people. This whole idea of having the honesty to tell myself, yes, part of the motivation is to accrue, to attract attention, almost in a sort of vain or self-centered sense. I rejected it very quickly as soon as I was able to identify it. And I think that I was under its spell, if you like, probably for a few months, but I was still able to gather together some, I hope, interesting content, interesting substantive content. Now I'm really at the point where I just do not want to be led by this motivation, which, having replaced intellectual stimulation coming from maybe an oversaturation of the content I produced, comes more in the form of a complacency, satisfaction at the anticipation of getting attention, which I am actually not interested in. So to come back to the antidepressants topic, because that was supposed to be the topic of the video, and I still have it in mind, all this was clearly like coming to the realization that this was happening was helped, I think, by my being on antidepressants, because I was enjoying that detachment. The detachment allowed me not only the clarity of being able to identify that was my replaced motivation, but it also allowed me to look at it in the face, not as something that I would have wanted to repress straight away, because I would not have wanted to allow, or to allow the possibility that I might be vain, or I might have been motivated by self-interest in some form or other. But the detachment also allowed me to say, that's exactly what happened, and that's completely okay. And so, from this perspective, you could really see, and I could really see how I not only had a more 5-ish approach to my 4-ishness, but at the same time also Enneagram 5 with the 4 wing. I hope you guys are more or less familiar with Enneagram. But also, I was enjoying this side, enjoying being able to come to terms with these inner emotions, which, as you know, INFJs are not always very good at telling how they feel. I repeatedly talk about this, but I'm a prime example, I'm a prime case of someone who's much, much better at like picking up how other people feel than myself. And that applied to, well, it's all connected to the topic of depression and antidepressants, because if I went on antidepressants in the first place, because I had embarked upon a career in Geneva that was quite, on paper, quite brilliant, if you want to call it that. But I realized at the end of the day, when I had my burnout and I realized I had been sad, that I don't actually give a shit about any of these things, that all I care about is doing what I'm interested in, being intellectually stimulated, and hopefully engage in stuff that people will relate to. So this question of meaning that comes way before any question of social status or achievements just came back to the fore. But I had probably been convincing myself a little bit too much that that this whole idea of professional success mattered to me, because I was supposed to have the right capability for it or whatever. But I do have a capability for other things which interest me a lot more. As you know, my philosophical system, which is progressing very, very, very well, very nicely, and many other things. And so, so eventually, in Ireland, very happy, I've been having a very good time here. I had decided already prior to that to start phasing out, taking the antidepressants. And so eventually I did. I was phasing them out, only taking half of one a day. Afterwards, my mom told me that I could have been a little bit more careful and taken half of one every 2 days for a while before going completely, like, stopping. Because I did experience a few days of feeling quite strange, I have to say. Feeling quite emotional, feeling quite. You see, I can now tell that the prime source of change was an increase in the emotional intensity with which I was feeling things. But this, my body registered as something that had become almost foreign, because it's been nearly a year that I hadn't been on antidepressants, or rather that I had not been off them. So my body there's a really bodily connection between the antidepressants and yourself. It's quite incredible in some ways. But my body was feeling quite tense all the time. And I think it's because there was a kind of withdrawal, which I probably didn't make easy as a result of having not gone cold turkey by any means, but maybe I didn't phase it out as much. I phased it out over about 3-4 weeks. I could have done it for longer. I feel much better now. It's only been a week. I feel much, much better now. What's interesting is I really became aware of the extent to which the intensity of my emotions, not in all cases, for example, the intensity of my feelings for my girlfriend have always been very strong and haven't changed, and that's not going to change anytime soon. So it's almost like beyond, like in a certain realm of intensity, certain intensities were such that they remained more or less unchanged. But in a lot of other things, listening to music, watching a movie, taking a walk in the park, relating to other people, going out. Like these lesser intensities than for example, what love would come with, were more at the mercy of a certain numbing provided by the antidepressants, caused by the antidepressants, also with the expectation that by being numbed, you'd also be protected a little bit from being assailed by, let's say, negative emotions. So this is disappearing progressively, the numbness. It's really interesting because when you become conditioned for 1 year, you really forget that there used to be another phase prior to that. What's really good is that I would distinguish between emotional intensity and emotion quality, the quality of an emotion. So when I started going on antidepressants, it wasn't because I was trying to deal with emotional intensity. I loved feeling intense emotions. But the quality of my emotional realm was one that was directed toward a lot of sadness, a lot of frustration, a lot of anxiety. And so I took antidepressants because I wanted to learn to deal with that with more distance. Again, at the cost of what I described. Now I'm in the place, and I'm happy to say that being off antidepressants has allowed me to recover the emotional intensity that I used to have, and that I maintained, but in a more scattered fashion. But without taking away from me the emotional quality of having an improved emotional environment, which is much happier, obviously connected to the systemic decisions I made to quit my job and to be on this sabbatical, which has proved fantastically useful to me, regaining a sense of agency, regaining a sense of anticipation, freedom to choose the path for my own life, ability to see a lot of people. I've never been as social as, well, I mean, last time I was as social as I'm these days is a few years ago, and I think, in my opinion, and especially from the perspective of an introvert, it's always a good thing. It probably means that I don't NITI loop as much as I used to. And so all these things are very good, but it does ask the question, maybe a month ago at this point, I came to the conclusion that I was not an INFJ 454 with a 5 wing, but probably an INFJ 5 with a 4 wing, because I suppose the way that I came to settle on that is that although I do have this very 4-driven sense of identity and authenticity, a lot of my emotional spectrum is filtered first by a rationalizing process, and I tend to have a lot of 5 traits, as I have broached in my videos before as well. And I think that 5 with the 4 wing, actually the descriptions that I've seen online, they correspond to me more. If I wanted to be very schematic about it, I would say that I'm probably more an emotional intellectual than an intellectual emotive, and that this analytical filter is probably not something I should try to get rid of. It is probably something I should embrace, because it doesn't necessarily take away from the emotion. It just adds it colors it with this dimension of critique, analysis, broodingness, if you like, and having researched more the 5 with the 4 wing, specifically the INFJ 5 with the 4 wing, also INTJs, because that's quite common among INTJs as well, and INTPs. I really related to what I read, and some of the authors that related the most to, let's say in philosophy, for example. So I would mention Nietzsche or Wittgenstein. They are 5 with a 4 wing, and it's true that I have never related more to anybody than to these people, and it's very clear that they're extremely emotional, both Nietzsche and Wittgenstein, for instance. But that there is always this filter that comes first, this need for a certain mastery of a certain knowledge that comes prior to the sheer emotional expression that you would associate with a 4 type. But now that I'm recovering this emotional intensity that turns out to be a lot greater perhaps than what I remembered, because even in a year you can forget some things, the question is, will I suddenly realize that after all I might be a 4 with a 5 wing? And if so, what does that say about the possibility for types to change, especially if they're influenced by medication? And on this note, I will close the video, and let's start a conversation. Talk to you soon, my friends. Ciao.